In this video, I will be giving my thoughts on the new jungle monster buffs, jungle clearing, and ganking changes. Thoughts on jungle effectiveness, as in which champions got screwed and which seem strong, will be in another video. Keep in mind that all this can change if Riot wants it to. First off, I gotta mention this because a lot of people will no doubt not shut up about it. Every reasonable jungler is fine, with the exception of Nautilus for the first clear at least, who seems to just get destroyed. I already uploaded a lot of examples of individual clears, and I highly recommend you go back and watch them. First off, a few key things have to be mentioned. The new jungle has all new beefed up monsters that can destroy most junglers during the first clear, especially the chicken camp, which is the former wraith camp. To add to this, the machete was reworked again and given a 400 gold price tag, which only enables you to purchase 2 potions. Smite was also given a 60-second cooldown, which means you will not have it up as often, and it did not get a damage boost to compensate. All camps also now give you a buff if you use Smite on them, as well as bonus experience. The red buff and blue buff also have a Smite buff, but this is separate from their original buffs. The spawn time of the major buffs was also changed to 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which means you cannot start on them anymore. Overall, this makes the jungle a much more dangerous place for a lot of champions, at least for the early levels. First off, it's best to mention what all the Smite buffs are. Remember, you get these from all the small camps. We have the frog buff, which essentially gives you a quilt coat-like effect. It seems to be moderately helpful at the early levels for champions lacking clearing power. The wolf camp grants you a wolf ghost that is meant to scout a small area around your blue camp. It's meant to deter invaders, but it seems pretty worthless using your Smite to scout, and it's better just to, use it to try to secure the buff rather than look at it. The chicken camp gives you a buff that will warn you when you trigger a ward. This one's actually very strong, especially combined with a red trinket, and of course it's very useful later in the game. The rock turtles grant you a buff that will cause your auto attacks to stun a monster, not champions, every 5th hit and deal bonus damage. It is also immediately consumed when you hit a tower and you deal bonus damage to it. This was changed from its last iteration, which is pretty damn worthless. This one is perhaps the best of the clearing buffs for a majority of the junglers, as some champions are able to abuse the proc to no end and keep themselves healthy because of it. The blue buff gives you a huge mana heal and the red buff gives you a huge health heal. These are the simplest of the bunch. First things first, the new jungle really hurts. Most junglers cannot make a full clear until they purchase a machete upgrade. This severely gimps early ganks as you are forced to waste an entire minute going home to heal and buy an item before you can actually gank. Early aggro junglers have basically been shafted. Hell, you cannot even hope to get both buffs before going home, as the jungle monsters likely have decimated you. By far, one of the dumber things I've noticed is that champions that would normally want blue buff are forced to start with a small camp buff they do not want. If you want the blue buff, it works better to start off the small turtles, but a lot of champions who want the blue buff early do not really use the passive from the turtles that well. The champions that red buff have to start off with that frog, but they would prefer something else. The reason this is an issue is that most every champion clears the camp faster than Smite can come off cooldown. That means that if they use it on the first camp to get the buff, and because they need it to actually reach level 2, they will not have it ready for the buffs. Now, natural progression through the jungle is to clear one camp and then head to the nearest camp and clear that one. Even doing so will still leave your Smite on cooldown for most champions. If you try to take the red buff after you started on the turtles and clear the chickens, your Smite will still not be ready for you. It's the same thing with blue side. You will likely just end up having to tank the monsters, which is a big no, or having to wait around for the Smite to be up, or you'll just end up overkilling it with Smite. Remember, doing a camp without Smite is a huge problem in itself. The buff you get from smiting it will help out a lot of junglers who wasted a lot of mana or got their asses kicked. Not only that, you do not want to risk having it stolen. To make matters worse, not using Smite on the camp is a huge loss in experience, which is very painful, especially early in the game. You also cannot save Smite for the buff monster after your first camp clear, since you need to use it there in order to get to level 2. Otherwise, the buff monster is just going to wreck you. One could say that Riot is trying to encourage players to start off in a favorable small camp and then take the buff camp they don't really want, so they can extend the lifetime of the buff they really do want. My concern for this is that it makes pathing very predictable and it really opens up the danger of just having your most valued buff be stolen. After the first clear and after you purchase your first item, no jungler, not even Nautilus, has a problem with the jungle anymore. Riot decided to gimp early aggression, at least for the first few levels. This required them to severely nerf the first clear, but they made sure no jungler suffered past that. Once I purchased my first item, it really does feel like I'm jungling in like Season 3 or Season 4. I mean, with the occasional monster buff here and there, and of course the new jungle items. It doesn't feel any different past the first clear. With all that said, most players are probably wondering what the most efficient clearing routes are. Basically, the old school superior routes are the best, and that's what Skarner has been doing this entire time in the background. They really do leave you at a risk of being invaded, but they are the best way to make sure you do not die at the camps themselves, and to maximize experience, gold, and buff times. Most routes work, but the superior pathing is the best in making sure even the most shafted junglers have an easy time. If you thought this video was informational, please leave a comment below and give it a like. The rest of this video will simply show the path being completed.